Well, welcome. Thank you for taking part in the project 70 for the Redlands. We've been chatting a lot of film, so I'd just love to hear your story about how you and your family landed in the Redlands. So let's start there, as in your parents and your grandparents and when they arrived and how they got here and where they're from.
Okay, all right.
You go.
I go? All right.
You go.
Well, my father came over to the Redlands when he was, after a long, can we stop that? I just...
Oh no, it's just like, well, keep on, don't worry.
Start again.
We'll start again.
No, don't let me stop. Anyway, how my parents ended up in the Redlands, well, it goes back a long way. My father came out to Australia when he was 18. His father was already here in Australia, and together they worked as timber getters in the areas, Bundaberg, Karoi.
Jim the Forest, yes.
Yes, those areas. Life was very Spartan, I could say. I remember my father saying things like, they would just hack out an area of lantana and clear that up, and then they'd pitch their little tent there, and they'd put their tools and supplies there, and each day they would just go out into the bush and start felling trees, which was all done by hand. They had broad axes, broad saws, splitters. Everything was done by hand, and they just used this enormous broadsword. I remember it still being at home when we were young there for quite some time. I think we even attempted to use it ourselves. It was virtually like this massive saw with huge teeth and wooden handles either side, and they would just grab it and saw through a tree. And they would, what they were doing was splitting logs for links for sleepers for the railway. And virtually they did that quite a few years, I'd say. Dad was 18 when he came out. He was born in 1920, so that would be 1938. And they bought the farm in Wellington Point, 1946.
It was about mid-40s.
Yeah. Mid-40s, yeah. And so that time was spent cutting sleepers for the railways virtually and saving their money to buy the farm. And I suppose a couple of little tales would be like, I remember my grandfather saying that when he first came out to Australia, which was in the 30s, it was during the Depression, and he said that he got picked up for vagrancy, and actually no. Well, he had no money, but what he got picked up for was taking a ride in the train. In the carriages, not passenger carriages, but like
goods train.
Goods train, just jumping on the goods train and getting from town to town that way. And he got caught doing that. And
were they vagabonds? Would that be the vagabond or not? Yeah. Train jumping.
Train jumping, I think that's what they called it. I can't remember what it was called. There's a special term for it. But anyway, he did train jumping along with other people because it was the Depression. And looking for work, going from town to town and hoping to pick something up. And he got taken, got brought before the magistrate, and they said, okay, well, this is, you've been caught doing this, your fine is X amount of money. And he just said, well, if I had the money, I would have bought myself a ticket. I don't have any money, I can't pay the fine. He says, well, it has to be, I don't know how much, was it a week in jail or something like that? And I think my grandfather's eyes lit up and thought, oh great, this sounds good. He got fed and watered his head for a week in jail. He thought it was wonderful. But anyway, yes, it didn't worry him at all that, and he got let off. And of course the first thing he did was go jump on another train to see if he can get job in some other town. Yes, but it was quite interesting. Like he just it was just the way it was back there, and eventually they they just bought their farm in Wellington Point and they farmed it.
Do you know why they came out to Wellington Point? What made them choose the Redlands?
I don't really know. I think they did have some friends that they knew, some other Macedonians that had heard that the Bogojeviches, they had a farm there off Collingwood Road. Now, whether they came there for because they knew other people, and they might have recommended that farm to them, because the farm itself, it was bush up until where the old farmhouse, which is no longer there, it was bush till then to there, and that was all cleared by hand by my grandfather and father. So their timber cutting skills really came in handy, and yes, they cleared it all by hand, and it'd be at least half of what the farm is.
No, at least.
Yeah. They would have only had half the farm, what you could see today. They would have cleared the other half. Plus, they went right down into the paddock where they, thinned it out and that, because they had their draft horse and they had a few cows which they milked. They had their chicken pen and chickens and that down there. So they would have thinned that out by hand also, except occasionally Dad would use a bit of dynamite, apparently. I remember a story my mum told me. She said because I was born in the Bayview Hospital, which now is Wepstead. It used to be a residence, right? And then it was a hospital, private hospital, run by Matron Dolly. And then it became a convalescent home, and now it's a private residence again. Well, Mum, that's just virtually up the road from the farm. And she said she heard this almighty boom and the building shook. And she thought, I bet that's Sam. And it was. That was him blowing up some huge stump with a bit of dynamite. I mean, he had no skills in dynamite, blowing up things with dynamite. Just did it. Did it, and no one seemed to worry too much about things like that back then either. Just sort of got on with it and did what you could. But yes, and that was So
what was it like being brought up as a child on a farm?
It was.
Well, we didn't go to many places.
No.
Because they were always working on the farm 7 days a week.
And what about the car? When was the first car purchased?
56.
1956. Yeah. So no one had a car, terribly, And we did have the railway station, Wellington Point Railway Station, which was discontinued when...
66.
They pulled all that line out. And then introduced buses, which was a bit silly in a way, because it obviously they realised that and they put the train back in.
But we had a very forward-thinking councillor, John Golby, who sadly was in a tractor accident and passed away. He was our local member and state member as well, and he insisted that the railway land not be sold.
Yes.
So they had all that land there. They didn't have to really repossess anything to do the railway again. Yeah.
But it was for someone that lived in the Redlands, like where we lived at Wellington Point, to get a job in, say, Cleveland, there was no transport for you, because the only bus that took you to Cleveland was a shopper's bus, because it mainly catered for people working in the city, which, by the way, we used to be called Brisbane. Back then, it was, now everything's just, they've gone to the city. And back then you say, no, they've gone to Brisbane today. It was all, because it was such a long way. Yeah. But, you could not get public transport to Cleveland if you worked in Cleveland until the railways came back in. And then you could, get a train to Cleveland. Because Cleveland was quite the hub. Right. Whereas it's somewhat deteriorated over the years, and it's more like
Capalaba, Vicky Point today.
Yeah, Cleveland's...
because they didn't think Cleveland or the area would go ahead so much when they put Woolworths in, and that was in the 80s. And they didn't... they had no idea that it would grow the way it did. And then they had Raby Bay, and then they had the people from the islands come over for shopping and things like that, So,
So where did you go to school?
Wellington Point, Cleveland High.
Yes.
And what was it like going to Wellington Point School?
Oh, it was tiny, wasn't it? We were like
it was huge, but now... no. Very small.
Wasn't we had about, I don't know what we had, about 100 kids or something like that in the school or something.
There's about 20 to 30 kids in a photo, and that's 2 grades.
Yeah.
But you only had the one teacher for the 2 grades.
Yeah. I think in our grade 7 class, I think we had, like 8 kids or something like that. It was really small. Yeah.
And let me ask you, what do you like about living in the Redlands the most? What's kept you here?
I used to love our bay breezes, which I certainly remember. My husband's parents lived at Kapira, right, which is northern suburbs, and I know we'd go over there, and we'd be absolutely cooking in summer. It was just so hot, and we'd come home, and it was just like,
you get to Capalaba, wouldn't you?
Yeah, that's right.
And you feel the difference.
The difference, the change. Immediately, the wind, the breeze, the freshness and that. Yeah, and we would just come home and it would be so cool at home and just open everything up and it was just lovely. And I sort of, that was something that was very much, and it was just, people used to really enjoy that too, coming. And they used to always, coming to visit and that. And they often used to say, you can smell the sea, which I couldn't. But they used to say, yes, it's refreshing. You can smell the air. It's different, And they often used to say, it makes me really hungry when I come here. And I'd always eat and fall asleep on the couch. And I used to think, I must be a very boring hostess because they. Most visitors used to fall asleep on that couch. I just don't believe it, but anyway, that's what happened. But growing up in the Redlands, we had like our schoolmates that most of them were, their mums and dads were farmers. The kids that we interacted with anyway. We had lots of fun on the farm because we'd always be given little jobs to do, whether it be picking up all the carrot tops and stacking them on the carryall and used to take them down for the cows and the horse and things like that. And, you'd always be in the patch eating, peas, fresh peas and things like that. And, who'd find the first cucumber and, and
watermelon season.
Yes, watermelon season, yes.
Favourite?
Well, you didn't pick a watermelon and cut it. You picked a watermelon and dropped it, and you just ate the insides and left the rest.
It's mainly, when there was a lot, when there was a lot,
But, Look, we didn't have TV till about mid-60s.
Yeah, something
About
like
the
that.
mid-60s, but we really didn't miss it. The radio was for Dad. Come up at lunchtime and listen to the market report, and you weren't allowed to say boo.
Nope.
Yeah.
It was all, you know, like, I couldn't say anything because they did rattle it off quite quickly, and he wanted to find out what he got for his carrots, his tomatoes, his capsicum, you know, his cucumbers, his melons, his pumpkins, or whatever else he grew. You had to be very, very quiet. And I was speaking to someone. Had the same experience at the table at lunchtime too.
Yeah. Any farmers' children weren't allowed to talk. They know.
Yeah,
all knew that.
Not that was the ABC, the market report.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's all online now.
Oh, probably.
Yeah. I don't think there is such a thing. I think it's all online. You know, you can look up online and see how it went. Everything, you had to be quiet through the whole thing, right through to the end of the heavy vegetables, you know, you had to be quiet.
And what do you enjoy about the Redlands most now?
What do we like about it?
Or what's the biggest change that you don't like then?
Well, I suppose the loss of the farms, but then I'm realistic enough to realise that the farmers sold their farms because they never had super or anything. But I think the lack of farmland is my biggest thing, you know. But I suppose that's progress, I've been told.
I do miss that a lot. The scenery, you know, like I've just had it for so many years. You know, it was very, very pleasing to the eye, and I think the worst part about the housing today, I find, is that the homes are like so close together. There used to be a stipulation you couldn't have those small blocks. I don't know what they are now, you know, what size they are, but you had to have
Had to be 6 foot from the fence line here anyway.
I know it was like a 32 perch block usually, or even like nothing less than a 26 perch or 20, I don't know what it was. It was particular. 40 perches is quarter of an acre.
Right.
And a 32 perch block was generally what people used to work on. And even when they developed in the early days, they used to work on 4 blocks to the acre. So you take away your road and that, and you end up with roughly 32 perches. But now, you know, like the houses are so close together, and I don't really think that's a healthy way for people to live. I know so many homes we've seen have been demolished. My house, if I sold it, I think it would be demolished. I've seen houses, because I've been there since 76, you know, that house. It would be demolished. It would just be crunched up and gone. And then I'll put like 2 to 3 places there. And I can't see that as a wise decision for people's health, you know, like mental health even. It's just like, or if you want to call it spiritual health, anything, any health sort of thing, like being so wedged in, so close together. And I sort of feel, okay, I know they say, oh, land is getting so scarce and things, but I think I've always been a great believer of people moving, you know, like if there's not enough space here, well, move to the regional towns and sort of start populating those. And I believe, like, it would be great for the regional town, and services will follow and people will find work. It just works like that, you know, like as people, it's when people vacate the place that things start closing down and you get less services and that. But I always felt like it was a big mistake making the blocks so tiny and keep, putting people in they call it infill, I guess, and now they call it infill. I think that's a big mistake with the Redlands. I know the farms had to go, because farmers were selling them, and another problem too was I think things got very expensive. Chemicals for farming, fertilizers or anything that you want, cartons or all that stuff that you needed to keep your farm going. That was hiking up in price, and the fruit and vegetables that people grew, well, that was always on supply and demand, and so that was never like a truly regulated thing. It could end up costing you more to send your produce to market than what you'd get back. Sometimes people just stop picking because it was just too expensive to send. Because by the time you added in, the cost of growing the product, the cost of picking the product, the packing the product, freighting your product, it was just wasn't viable. And I think that's why a lot of the farmers sort of stopped farming. Farmers stopped farming in the Redlands. Some people that had a passion for farming still and had a farm in Redlands would sell and go to Bundaberg, where they could get the bigger farms and they could buy things in bulk then, like in, because there's, do acres of tomatoes and that and buy things in bulk and things, the cost of the production would come down. A lot of them did that, but it's sad to see it all under tar and cement and bricks and mortar and all that. But I think it's even sadder to see when they, take older homes away and put 2 or even 3 homes there.
Because inevitably those homes don't open their windows.
Oh, yeah.
They don't hang up their washing outside. They've got air conditioning and they've got clothes dryers and things like that. And so...
do you think that impacts on the community?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I think it does. I mean, if you live in a more open area, you're bound to catch the breezes. But, when you're in a built-up area, it'd be quite stifling, I think. Yeah. It's a shame.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you would like to add? We're going to wrap it up. Is there anything else you'd like to add about the Redlands? Just living here.
Well, I think it's, I suppose just generally, people that live here now have way more opportunity than what we ever had as children, But then that's happened right across the board anyway, hasn't it? With technology, etc. So it's just a totally different lifestyle now. Everything is way more accessible. I mean, like, things have changed dramatically, like things like the library. The library in the Redlands in the old days, wasn't it part of the Memorial Hall? There was a tiny section in the Memorial which doesn't exist anymore. What's there, the RSL?
Yeah, the RSL's there, but the old Memorial Hall's down in the showgrounds.
That's transported across. But the library was this tiny little, it was virtually a room, wasn't it? And that serviced the whole of the Shire. Well, look at our library today.
Yeah.
But then, it's just amazing how much it's grown, and children today would get way more resources available to them. But then we didn't really need that many resources. Back then, we were the Encyclopedia Britannica at school was all we needed. That's all that was, the expectations were totally different when you were studying and that sort of thing. Yeah. But I definitely remember the Encyclopedia Britannica being in this glass case at school, and we only were allowed to take the book out and put it down on the table that was in front, and look at it there. And I think I actually picked up the book once and took it to the classroom to ask my teacher something. What are you doing walking around with that book? Take it back, you know. You know the rules.
I love that. It's changed so much, hasn't
Yes,
it?
it has.
Yeah,
Yes.
it has. Well, thank you for that. I think they're wonderful stories, and thank you for sharing them with us. Really,
Okay.
I really appreciate it.
Fine,
Thank you for being
that's
part of
fine.
the project. All good? Lovely.
Yeah,
Thank
okay.
you. That was great. I love the dynamite story.
Yeah.
I can remember being down there with Dad when he did that.
Yeah, do you? Oh, okay.
Well, maybe that's why I was there, because there
'cause-
was nobody else at home.
That's right. Your mum was in hospital having a baby.
Yes.
Yeah.
Funny.
But yeah, no, it was yeah, it's quite different, wasn't it?
Yeah, life was very different.
Yeah,
It was simple,
yeah,
but hey, we didn't know any different, so it didn't matter. And
yeah,
all our friends and everything had the same.
yeah,
You know?
Yes.
Whereas today, life seems to be a competition between what you've got and what you haven't got and what they've got.
I
yeah.
think that's unfortunately a global issue.
Yes,
Yeah,
it is.
that
it
is. Oh, of course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course
Yeah.
it is. Yeah,
I see it,
Yeah.
I see it all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, because people always think, oh, I'm going to do better for my child.
Yeah.
And really, sometimes they're not.
No, I agree.
Mm.